The course requirements included a relatively complicated case study that involved a U.S. manufacturing company, ABC, setting up manufacturing subsidiaries in 2 countries that would be chosen by each student. The new subsidiaries would locally manufacture food products currently being manufactured by ABC only in the United States. ABC has designed and built its own food processing machinery, and the new subsidiaries would use this proprietary machinery in their local manufacture of breakfast cereal and food bars. Detailed facts were provided to the students that included information on tangible and intangible property owned by ABC that would have to be made available to the subsidiaries in order for them to be able to locally manufacture ABC products. Among other requirements, the assignment asked the students to recommend a structure regarding how the subsidiaries will obtain access to tangible and intangible property. For example, the subsidiaries could purchase such property, receive it in exchange for shares, lease or license it, etc. There is no correct answer. Rather, the specific recommendation would reflect factors including the specific facts of the case and the local country, tax, and legal environment. While it is usually clear what tangible property will be used by a newly formed subsidiary, it is often less clear what intangible property will be used. Because identifying the exact items of intangible property that will be used is so important to tax structuring, this approximate 15-minute session involved discussion of the intangibles as an aid to the students for their work on the case study. The discussion thus reflects the case study background information. The benefit of viewing or listening to this session is to develop a sense for how to identify intangible assets, the use of which will be required in a newly formed or existing foreign subsidiary that will start up a business currently being conducted by the parent company in its home country. I'd like to talk a little bit about the ABC situation. Now, we've talked about the fact that there's going to be machinery, and again, as you're working on assignment 4, look back and see what it says about the machinery. Again, my recollection is that the cost is $10 million, but that the fair market value, I think, was 15. There's also discussion in the questions and answers about how much other money is needed for various things. Think about what the balance sheet is going to look like. You're given information on how much, in a sense, value is needed to be either in that company or available to that company. How are you going to structure the balance sheet so that the company can operate, have use of the machinery, have cash for funding the initial losses that it's going to have, and for the other things that it needs funds for? Look at those details and attempt to think through for your 2 countries, what should that balance sheet look like? Taking into account then capitalization rules or investment company rules or investment rules. How much should be the capital? How much should be the shareholder debt? Now, the next thing I'd like to talk about a little bit is the intangible property. Think about what intangible property does ABC have, and what intangible property will be specifically needed in your chosen country. What specific intangible property will be used in your local country? Because we have to go through, in a sense, several steps. Identify the items of intangible property, and then, secondly, well, once we've identified it, how do we get the rights to those intangible property, the rights to use those items of intangible property? How do we get it there? And again, we had our slide with 6 different bullet points on it. Technically only 5, because the last one was debt with the shareholder guarantee. 5 approaches that we identified. Well, how is that intangible property, the use of it, going to get there? First of all, let's talk about the identification. What are some of the items of intellectual property that ABC has? Were there any patents that ABC had over the food production machinery? Yes, there were. Do those patents and the related know-how in how to manufacture the machinery, does that intellectual property, is it going to be used by the subsidiary that's going to manufacture food? What do you think? Okay, I hear a no from Yakuza, but it's a very quiet no, so I'm not sure whether that's because she likes to be quiet, or whether it's because she has a tenuous reason for it. What is your reason for saying no?
I don't think they are actually gonna lease or maybe selling the particular machine, but the patent does not make any difference, because yes, the subsidiary would not be manufacturing the same machine, so they don't really need the patent for that.
That's exactly right. If the subsidiary is either going to own already completed machinery, whether that ownership is acquired in exchange for shares, contribution to capital, sale, lease, whatever it happens to be, they're receiving an already manufactured machine with that somebody else, in this case ABC, used intellectual property to create that machine. And ABC also, of course, owns the trademark and that's put on the machine and so on. So the purchase or the receipt by whatever means of that asset is just receiving an asset with a trademark on it or with technology that's already in it. The subsidiary does not need to have, will not use, because it will not be manufacturing that machine. It doesn't need that intellectual property. Okay, what are some other items of intellectual property? Okay, secret formula. Okay. And that's a rather interesting one. Now, what have the facts told you about the secret formula and production of the special mixture? They've said that the way it's kept secret is that a senior person who knows the formula and the particular way of mixing it would have to be there to physically do it. Again, we need to know physically how something is going to be done before we talk about, well, contractually, how might it be structured. Now, another aspect of the physical thing is that you're told it doesn't make a lot of sense to mix it in California and then send the secret formula back to your country. Rather, some amount of the secret formula that you would make in your local country, your chosen country, some of it would be sent to the United States for manufacturing the cereal and the bars in the United States for the U.S. market. And some would be kept and used in the manufacturing of cereal and bars that are going to be produced locally and sold in your local country and other countries around the region, and Europe eventually. You have this description of what's physically going to happen. Now, some senior guy is going to be there. He's going to oversee it. Part of the production of the secret formula goes and gets shipped to the United States. Part of it is used locally. So you need to say, well, how are the rights to that going to be available to the subsidiary? And again, you get back to, well, should you have a royalty-free license that is somehow provided in exchange for shares, or that's sold for a lump sum, or a royalty situation, and there's a license governing this? So you've got that question. How do you get the use of it into your local company, into your subsidiary?
So legally, this secret formula doesn't exist.
Well, the fact that you and I do not know the secret formula for this product doesn't mean that there's not a secret formula which Colin over there does know.
Law, tax law, or any law will recognize the value of that secret formula.
If this secret formula is something that others value and would pay for, then it's real. I mean, in fact, you're bringing up something that's very, very interesting, and there's recently been some discussion drafts by the OECD on intangible assets within the context of transfer pricing rules. And one of the things they are focusing on is not so much the legal form of intellectual property, but the economic form. If there is really something of value, then you have to recognize it, even though maybe it's hard to label it from a legal standpoint.
Professor, I also don't quite understand why ABC will have to have the secret part manufactured in a foreign country, then shifted it back to the United States.
Well, not shift it back. Remember the secret formula, the items that are included in the secret formula are coming from, Vietnam and maybe Cambodia, somewhere in Southeast Asia. So it makes more sense, since your chosen countries are in Asia, it makes more sense to transport these secret formula items, raw materials, to a location in Asia, do the mixing, and then use some portion locally for your production and some portion being sent to the plant in California where they're making products for the U.S. market. It makes more sense to do that than to transport the product, the raw materials, all the way to the U.S., mix it there, and then transport the secret formula part for the Asian production in your subsidiary back to Asia. In the moment or two we have left, let me just hit very briefly. We've talked about the patents on the machinery. We've talked about the secret formula. Now, just briefly, what other intangibles are there that you need to be thinking about? Well, one is the product recipes. It may not be, a big secret formula, but each product, the bars, the cereals, they each have some sort of recipe. Your company, that your new company that you're forming to conduct this manufacturing operation, they start up with zero knowledge. So just even the product recipe has to be, the ability to use those recipes has to be somehow provided to your manufacturer, to your new company. So again, how are those product recipes going to get there? Another one is with regard to the production processes. In other words, assume that there's maybe some patents over the production process of the food items, and there's certainly some know-how in terms of how the production line should be set up and the training of the people to, in fact, produce the cereal and bars on an efficient basis. There's the brand name and the logo, for the product, trademarks. All of those things are going to be used by the subsidiary, and you need to again think about that as part of your work. How do we get that right to use inside your company? Now, maybe you recommend a license that covers all these things. Maybe you recommend something else. I really don't, care. Rather, it's more from your standpoint, going through the process of, thinking what might be good and why. There's no right or wrong answer on this. Rather, what's important is recognizing that in this structuring of the activities of the subsidiary, they have to have the right to use it. You have to figure out how to get that right there.